Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our BUTI Intermissions conversation series. I'm Nicole Wendell. I'm the Director of Education here at BUTI, and joining me today is Anthony McGill, Principal Clarinet of New York Philharmonic. Welcome, Anthony. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. We're so fortunate to have you with us. So thanks for taking the time. So why don't we sort of dive right in? So let's start before BUTI. You were at BUTI with us in 1995, and how'd you get there? Take us from the beginning. When did you start?
Yeah, so I started when I was 9 years old in Chicago. Grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I started in music because there was a band at my school that year, but also because my parents just believed in a music education and arts education, and so my brother was playing an instrument at this point, and that's kind of how I got into music. And I started going to getting private lessons, and I went to a music program in Chicago, the Merit School of Music,
Hmm,
and the rest is history, as they say. But
yeah,
yeah, so and then I started going to, of course, youth orchestra, and then some summer camps, and then that was the year I was lucky enough to go to BUTI.
that's great. And you mentioned your brother. Is he older or younger?
Yeah, he's older, 4 years
And
older.
he, yeah, if I have it correct, is he playing with Seattle? Is that right?
Yeah, he's the principal flute of the Seattle Symphony. We might get to this a little later, but it was actually a really great summer for me in 1995 because my brother was also a flute student at TMC at Tanglewood Music Center. He was one of the fellows, so
Wow.
we weren't there together. We weren't on the same campus really,
Yeah.
but yeah, my big brother was down the hill at Tanglewood.
That must have been fun. Was there any, like, when you were growing up, sibling rivalry, or was it all peaceful music making?
No, I don't think it was a rivalry at all because he won. There was no there was no competition there. He is so great and was so great back then. So I think there were time sensitive times because he really taught me a lot too. In
Hmm.
addition to just being kind of really supportive of like my level of skill and talent. Just he was really proud of me. He also like kind of felt a lot of responsibility for me. So he taught me and we probably got into some arguments at times, and still do, but it's all love and support.
That's great. I think probably if I were in the same situation, my sister is younger. She's 5 years younger, and if she picked up another string instrument, I probably would have been mad.
Well, good thing
I
we
would be
didn't
like,
we didn't play the same instrument because that could have been hard. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that might have been hard too,
Yeah.
for sure. So you were at BTI, and then you went to college. You studied music. What what was there a defining moment when you decided, like, this is it. I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, I think I decided that before I went to college for it.
Hmm.
At that point, like that summer, for instance, I was really into music at this point because I was already studying at Interlochen. I was already going to boarding
Mm-hmm.
school
Hmm.
for music, and I kind of already had a vision of what I wanted to do, and I just fell in love with music pretty early on. Probably like when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. I knew that I wanted to be involved in music. I didn't know what would happen with it, but I just knew I wanted to be around musicians and involved with music.
Yeah. Did you think, I want to be a solo player, or I want to play orchestra, or did you have that vision?
I think I was pretty open. Um,
Yeah.
I knew how hard it was to get into an orchestra. I knew how hard it was to have a solo career. I knew all of the stuff about how the difficulties. So I think I was actually fairly open about what would make me happy being a musician. And so I definitely kept that as open as possible. I was like, I know, like maybe I'll teach, maybe I'll play music, maybe I'll be involved in music. I just knew that I wanted to be around music, and I was a musician. So however that was going to play out, I think I would have been pretty happy.
That's awesome. Yeah, keeping your mind open for what's to come in the field is, I think, something that all musicians can take note of, young musicians for sure. Um, how many auditions did you take before you landed your first job?
I think I took a few. I didn't take like 40 or 50 or anything like that because
Yeah,
I, like that's actually very common for
right.
people. But I got my lucky break when I was young. So I was 20 years old when I got into the Cincinnati Symphony, and started when I was 21. So I probably had 5, 6 auditions under my belt, though it wasn't zero. It was a few kind of big auditions that I didn't win, and I think that definitely
Yeah.
helped my sense of getting used to rejection and kind of and getting that kind of early experience where I was like thrown into it pretty deep,
Yeah.
like not messing around when you're trying to audition for the principal clarinet job of the Philadelphia Orchestra when you're like 18. It's
Wow.
that's like one of my early auditions, and I didn't win that, but I worked really hard for it, and it taught me
Yeah.
just a lot about showing up and what that feels like, and not like um, basically settling, not kind of cutting myself short, but really feeling like I had an opportunity and I was going to try to do my best for it.
Yeah, that's great. What's your take on like just going in and taking the big audition, even if, maybe peers or your teachers or somebody are like, "Hey, you start smaller, or why don't you, do this?"
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't know.
really think, and that's a really interesting, great question because I don't think there's a way that one should start smaller if you know that your goal, whatever it may be, um, is possible. So auditions are things that everything is possible in an audition. And if you also think about auditions that if you get experience doing them and you take from that experience that you will get better and you will actually work really hard for it, that you'll start off here and then at the end of the audition process, you'll be here no matter what happens at that audition. I think it can be very valuable. Um,
Yeah.
there's the concept that one can be too ambitious, and I never really believed in that concept.
Yeah.
I really thought that, like, you should, if you want something and you need to believe first that you have a shot at it, and you probably have a sense of what that is,
Sure. Yeah.
um, but if you're in the realm of that and you feel like you can do something because you want to do it and you think you can improve from doing it, then I say by all means.
That makes a lot of sense. Actually, that brings up a question that one of our students had. Solomon Sigmund from Alabama was going to be with us. He's a clarinet player. He's going to be with us this summer for the first time as part of our Young Artists Orchestra. And, we opened this up to some of our students. And he wants to know, how do you know if you're practicing like effectively enough in order to really be at that professional level, to be up there and ready?
Mhm. That's a great question, Solomon. I would say that you have to work with your teacher. You have to work with your mentors, in orchestra and your teachers to kind of get a sense of where you are. Another really important thing is that often we know if you have a concept of what you sound like because of recordings, and then you can actually listen to like 50 professional clarinetists as well, and you can actually record yourself and then listen to those other recordings too of those folks that you admire, and you say, what are the differences here? You can do that yourself, honestly. And then you can also go into your teacher and say, what are my biggest weaknesses? And they've probably already told you, but if you want to be really kind of true about it, honest, you say, what are these weaknesses, and what can I do to improve them? And your teachers have probably already talked to you about what those are, but then you have to kind of do that work, which is really tough, to just know that, okay, I want to be here, but right now I'm here. Okay. Or I want to be here and right now I'm there. I mean, it's all about just being really honest, but also positive with yourself and saying, and then you can actually get to work. Then you can say, okay, I know kind of what I need to do and what I want to do. And then you just work just incrementally and without hesitation and without negativity. And don't expect everything to be better immediately. That's the other trick.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring up that positivity and not being super negative with yourself, because it's hard in the practice room, right? When you're saying, okay, you're looking for errors. You're looking for places where you can improve. It's hard to find that balance between always being really honest and being clear about what needs to get better, and still being kind with yourself and patient. So I'm glad you mentioned it, because it's so easy to tip into the other side.
Right. Yeah, I mean, part of the interesting thing about being a musician, and even when you're young, when you're old, doesn't matter, is that part of you has to enjoy the process and enjoy working really hard. So you have to kind of enjoy the practice. It's not always going to be fun, but you have to enjoy like having the instrument in your hands, a lot. Because if you
Yeah,
don't really like to have the instrument in your hands, it's going to be hard to really put in the time and the effort in the right way.
yeah.
So, and knowing what inspires you musically will help that.
And little puzzles in the practice room.
Mhm.
Speaking of what music inspires you, I know you spent a lot of time playing with Metropolitan Opera. Do you miss the pit?
Yeah, I was there for 10 years, and I loved it. I think it was so inspiring to hear all those wonderful musicians and singers and artists and be in that orchestra with those amazing players. And what was great is not only how great everyone played, but how people treated each other in the orchestra. And that's what I missed the most. And I think it was such a great group of people, like a family, because you were there a lot, a lot of hours
Yeah,
together.
yeah,
And so that's what I miss. And just hearing just the beautiful music making of the greatest artists in the world, the singers,
yeah.
there were so many peak musical experiences. In a way, I feel like I don't miss it because I kind of remember it, and it made me who I am today as a musician and an artist. That it's kind of all still in there. That
Yeah,
in a way I feel like I never left. You know.
that makes a lot of sense. Do you find that there's a big difference, like especially in violin playing, and I'm a violinist, and second violin playing, first violin playing, it never stops in opera. You're playing forever. Do you find that there's a big difference in the style of playing and the way that you approach it between orchestral and opera playing?
Um, there is a little bit of a difference. Yeah, I would say that it is. I always use this analogy. It's like playing in the symphonic repertoire. It's like you're on the starting line and it's a sprint, and before you know it, it's over. It's like the 100-yard dash, you know, and it's more like that. And in the opera, it's like, okay, you're at the starting line, but you know that there is a sense of pacing that you have to get right. There is a shape and a flow, and um, basically an ebb and flow of the music making, with all the variables that are a part of it, like following the singer, following the conductor, following your colleagues in the pit, to make it to the finish line, which you have to actually run many laps in order to finish. And it might take, as you know, 5 hours to
Yeah.
finish. And so you really get to sit there with the music and experience it
Hmm.
in a different way. The heart rate is different. Your kind of ability to focus over time is challenged. all of these things are different.
Yeah. I find also for me, there's a familiarity that I get to have with opera music because you play it so many times
Yeah.
that I don't necessarily always get with all the orchestral pieces. So,
That is true. That's true. One like the way that the schedules are made is that you have 1 week to play this short program, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at the most in the symphonic repertoire,
right,
and then it's
right.
gone. You're on to the next program.
Yeah,
And so just when you thought, oh, I was really getting into this new piece you're working on, whatever, it's like, okay, well, that was nice. Now let's go on to the next
yeah,
program. So you have to be very quick, very quick.
yeah, that's true. So we've talked about opera, we've talked about orchestra. Tell us about your solo debut and your all the solo playing that you do. How'd you end up getting into the soloist field?
Yeah, I guess I've always like a lot of players, a lot of wind players, especially like you grow up learning all of the great concerti, and I was always competing in competitions and trying to do all of that too when I was in school. So it was just a natural flow to try to continue doing that at every
Hmm.
opportunity that I had. So it wasn't anything that was like I tried to. I really desperately wanted like some sort of solo career. It came along with um, actually my chamber music career, um,
Hmm.
and that gave me more of a kind of ability to kind of uh, express myself outside of the orchestral world, which was always really important to me. So I think it was probably picked up from some of that playing and some of those performances, and then getting opportunities early on from one of the major orchestras. I got an early opportunity with was the Baltimore Symphony, and the artistic administrator at the time there, who was an old friend of my brother and I, and who hired us when we were, quite young to solo with the orchestra, Miriam Yardumian, gave us like maybe one of our early shots with like a pro big symphony orchestra. And so I think a lot of that stemmed from those early opportunities,
Hmm.
and I really appreciate that. I mean, that's what's funny about people that lend you a hand when they feel like your music making is great. Is that they don't have to do that. They don't have to invite you to
Right.
participate in those things. And so it's really important to kind of think about who gave me my early opportunities, and then that's how other opportunities come from that. Is just you people hear you play or hear about you playing, and then want to invite you to join their orchestra, and so that's really nice. I get to play with different orchestras now and play solos in addition to my own. It's really really nice.
That's awesome. You must have a very jam-packed, perfectly scheduled schedule.
Perfectly scheduled. I don't know about that, but yes, at times it is jam packed. Yeah. Right
Yeah.
now, no.
Oh, right now there's some free time, just a little.
Yes, just a little.
You know, you mentioned as part of this, as part of your career, competing early and being involved in competitions as a young person and a young player. How important do you think that is for young students, especially with their eyes on being part of the field? How important is that, do you think?
I think people have different paths.
Hmm.
I will say now, at being on the other side of competitions and juries and these kind of things like this, where people are judged, it can be
Yeah.
actually very difficult, just philosophically, right? But I think the value is not so much on this side, on the listening and adjudicating side. The value of competitions is actually, if students and players want to do them, is that they get to work so hard that they really get to grow. And I think if you
Yeah.
think of competition in that way, it can be extremely valuable. That this is not something that I'm necessarily trying. I want to win, right? Everyone wants to
Yeah.
win,
Right.
but I know that if I don't win, I've already won because I've practiced, I've set a goal, I have practiced more, I've set further goals. I have been challenged, like greatly challenged by this repertoire and learning it, and sometimes having to memorize it. It's all making like my brain stronger. It's making my body stronger and more powerful. It's making my heart and more powerful to express myself as a musician under real pressure and
Yeah.
stressful situations.
Hmm.
And so, like anything, like exercise, it can, at first, it seems like a chore until you realize it's actually making me like a better person. It can make me a stronger, more beautiful person and player and all of these things. And so, on that level, I think if you keep it positive that way, and keep changing the kind of um, the thought process about it, competition, they can be very helpful for growth.
Yeah. So even if you don't win, you've already won.
I think so. I mean, I don't think you lose. You don't lose by going to a competition unless you get to the end of it and you didn't learn anything or
Hmm.
you didn't grow at all, personally.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean I wasn't super upset when I did not, because I was like furious sometimes, I'm sure.
That's always there,
Yeah.
probably. Um, how do you know how do you know when you're playing well in competition or in auditions? Is it a feeling? Is it you're responding to how you sound? Do you feel calm? How do you know when you're on your game?
Oof. That's a tough question um, because sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you don't really know, and sometimes you think, "Oh, I don't know if that went that well," and then you advance, or or
Mm-hmm.
someone tells you that you really spoke to them, and so at some point it doesn't really matter. At some point, like playing music and performing music is actually all that matters.
Yeah.
And so if I think the measure of that for me is if I felt like I was being expressive, that if I felt like I didn't let the nerves get in the way of my expression musically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hardest part. And so making that a priority, like of expression and communication emotionally and musically, then I think I'm doing a good job. So but if I feel like I'm frozen and I'm not sing or I'm not feeling it like at all because of whatever else I'm thinking about, then
Mm-hmm.
that's generally not a good performance for me.
Sure. Doesn't you don't feel focused, you don't feel present. I've had
Right.
performances like that.
Yeah, me too.
What helps me though is and I don't do a lot of solo playing because I don't particularly care for it, but what I do love is chamber music playing. And I know you also do some small ensemble playing. Um, yeah, what's your favorite sort of small ensemble to play with?
Well, the ensemble I play with the most is the string quartet.
Hmm.
And that's like the majority of my chamber music playing,
Hmm.
which is a lot, is with string quartet. So it's all the famous pieces, new pieces, and right now, in addition to that, I play a lot more with my trio with my brother, the McGill McHale trio, my brother
Hmm.
and Michael McHale on piano. And so that's really fun too, because there's so many things about that group that are really interesting and exciting. Of course, we're brothers, and well, not Michael and I, but we're brothers from another mother. But it's a really cool ensemble, flute, clarinet, and piano. But yeah, the string quartet repertoire is getting to play with different groups that have been, some that are younger groups, some that have been together forever. It's just so exciting to be able to sit in with a different band kind of
Yeah,
and get what that energy is, and the pieces become very different. They
yeah,
they take on a life of their own when you play with different groups.
yeah. It's crazy how much like a young group can play a for the Brahms clarinet quintet, for example, so different than an aged
And
an
it's
ensemble.
exciting. Yeah, it's exciting to be with people that are still exploring and to play with musicians that are trying to find their way in a piece, maybe for the first time, or groups that have played the piece many times.
Yeah.
It just makes it fresh.
What does it feel like to sit down in an ensemble and try and find your place there? For example, like in a string quartet that's been together for ages, but maybe it's the first time you're playing with them and you sit down and
Yeah, it's a fun thing to do. Uh, I basically look at it like I'm a guest, and I'm just listening. Like that's basically what I'm doing.
hmm
And that's actually the fun part, is that usually I know the piece, pretty well, but what I'm listening to is how it's going. So while I'm playing, I'm listening to what's happening. That's the most important thing. And a couple of course, the major works for clarinet, the quintet by Mozart and Brahms, the quintets by them. They start with just the strings, right?
hmm
So the great thing about chamber music is that listening is the most important thing you can do. Like we focus sometimes a lot on what we're doing when we're playing, but the listening part is actually even more important. So to be able to go outside and say, oh, this is how they're playing this opening. It's slightly different than the last time I did this, or it's slightly slower or faster. That's what makes it feel like it's a composition that's being played for the first time, is if
Mm.
it doesn't feel like it's the last time I played it. That's why I can play the pieces hundreds of times and they can feel drastically different, but in a good way, in a new way. It's almost like new pieces. And to hear how they tune with each other and how
Mm.
they are listening to one another. And then when I come in, to hear them kind of adjust and adapt and hear how my sound blends or doesn't with the group I'm playing, and how can I make that better, and how can we flow and hear everyone phrases differently as musicians. You can have the same notes on the page, but we all make music slightly differently, just based on um, who we are.
hmm
And so
Yeah,
it's nice to hear all of that.
it is really beautiful. Where do you think you first learned the art of listening?
Ooh, I mean, I've always loved listening, and I've obviously done it differently over the years and probably gotten better at it, hopefully. But listening to music was in the early years was really um, kind of a love affair, I think. Just hearing different recordings on the clarinet, especially old clarinet recordings when I was young, really young, and just understanding or trying to hear what that musician was saying, what that musician was talking about and communicating, and then just being able to kind of go to sleep with that sound or whatever, and try to imitate sounds of clarinet players.
hmm
And that's kind of, but we also in our house we always had music of all sorts playing. We had so many different types of music on the radio playing, and so it was just a part of growing up. It was a part of like who we were, even before like we knew we were going to become musicians. As a career. I think people can be musicians and not play music. That's what I think. Is that
hmm
part of being a musician is the love factor, and kind of having music reach you in a certain way. And so to always be an audience member and like a member of the audience is really important. So many people come up and they say, I don't play music, I don't have any kind of ear, but I just love music. But I think you are a musician if music speaks to you in that way as a human. And I think that's kind of how I approach, what it means to be musical.
That's beautiful. Do you still have music on all the time, playing in the house? And
Yeah, I don't like to sit around in silence actually, and I don't always have classical music playing. I'll
hmm
find new artists, on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, and I'll play them, and or I'll play some old stuff, and um, yeah. So I just love there to be music on all the time, basically. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, when I'm reading or something like that, I prefer there not to be music, just so I can
hmm
kind of watch the movie of the book in my head, you
yeah,
know. But besides that, I love there to be music on.
yeah. I'm the same way. If I'm doing something like reading, where, like you say, the movie of the book is in my head. If music is on, it's like a split screen almost. I'm like,
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
going on?
You like start focusing. You're like, hmm. No, it's like let me get back into this.
Yeah. And you say you listen to a lot of new stuff, but you also play a lot of new music too, right?
Yeah, I
What?
think I wish I could play more. There's so
Yeah.
it's so cool to like explore a piece with composers, and right now, which is really great. Um, I've had composers write things for me and doing a lot of commissioning, and we have new projects coming all the time. But even when I was in high school, I think I remember playing music by composers. It just that I was going to school with, and it just felt so like so much fun to like be able to like work something. If it's the part of being a musician, especially a classical musician, that makes you feel like you are a real artist.
Yeah.
If you're getting to work with a composer, you're in a way a part of this creation. You're a part of creating music and not only interpreting and recreating it, but um, you're a part of something new, like a new creation in the world. And that is really a special thing that we can't let go of. And I wish I could be a part of much more.
Yeah. What do you find that you would prefer to find a composer with whom you want to work and engage them and say, this is what I want to make happen? Or do you prefer to have somebody approach you and say, I want to write something for you. Let
Hmm.
me play it.
Yeah, I've experienced both, and it doesn't matter to me, honestly. It's just and people do things different ways. Some composers want to kind of talk things out before they
hmm
write a piece, and some composers just create, and then I see it, and then I do my part of creating the
Yeah.
sounds, and that works really well too. So I've had both
hmm
experiences happening, and it doesn't um, it doesn't matter to me how it happens. It's just matters that it exists, and and when it works really well and it speaks to me, then that's really great. If it doesn't, it still exists and it's still valuable to the world. Um,
Yeah.
it's a very interesting circumstance when you get to do that.
Do you find in any way that new music gives you, I guess it probably gives you more agency, but do you think that it gives the audience in more of a connection to, I don't know, a present time, somebody who's creating in the moment? I always wonder this.
Yeah, I think it can. I mean, ideally, that's what it does. I think there are a couple different camps and lots of different ways of thinking about new music,
hmm
and if we, it's really important, I think, to remove um, our preconceptions about new music. Our judgments of what that means before we
hmm
hear a work, because those can be really loaded, right? Those can be really
Yeah.
and we bring so much to the process of listening, especially in classical music, for some reason, to new music, that some of
hmm
the things that we bring aren't necessarily great, you know? And so we have to
Yeah.
watch that If we can be open. It's not always easy to, and trust me, I don't love every piece that I've ever played. Um, but I think what you're talking about is right, that if we're accustomed to just the possibility that there might be something that we don't know, the possibility that there's something about this work that is actually valuable because it's being performed as art,
Hmm.
today, that and that we don't know it yet. A lot of pieces that we know and love, we love them because we know them, and
Hmm.
vice versa. It works both ways. And if that's the greatest feeling, is that if I'm playing a new piece that I don't know, and I'm like, oh, that was okay, and then I know it better the second time I rehearse it, or the third time, or the next time I perform it, I usually, um, as I get more familiar with it, I find beauty in it, and I find um, interesting things about it. And it doesn't have to be beauty either. That's the great thing
Yeah.
about art. It doesn't actually have to be beautiful. It can
Yeah.
be interesting and be valuable or intriguing. And that's really the cool thing about art. It doesn't have to be something that you want it to be.
Yeah. I like to think of it that way too. I remember though when I was young, I mean even into college, I thought of new music as something other almost. There was the canon and there was like the rap, and that was incredible. And to do new music was wrongly a burden. And when I started to be able to fall in love with the art and to bring myself to the table with new music without all the like preconceptions, that's when my mind really started to open, and I there's a whole world out there. And that's kind of what I love also about BUTI students, is that they seem to have their eyes open to that. And a lot of students are talking with each other and with the composition students and creating collaborations, and really beautiful. And actually, one of our students, Ari Anav, from Fairfax, Virginia, he plays the oboe. He was also going to be with us for the first time this summer in Young Artist Orchestra. He would like to know, as somebody who is championing new music, what advice do you have for younger musicians looking to find and get involved in the composition of new music, whether it be solo or chamber or orchestral? What would you say?
Yeah, I think a key would be to just be open to saying yes to performing it, to be curious about communicating with people that are creators of this music. And if you're curious about creating music on your own, then to do it. So to basically to be free to say yes to however you're curious about it. So that's really important. Is that if you're in a place or in a school where you do have some colleagues that are into music, it's about communication, going up to people and propositioning them, saying, "Do you have any works for my instrument?" Or "I want to write something for you," or finding a way that you can collaborate. Just always, and making those kind of opportunities happen for you. One interesting thing is that even one of my former students, at one of the conservatories years ago, was friends with a composer at that school that wrote him a piece, and now that composer is like doing really great stuff. And I actually played one of the same piece that was written for Miles. Um, you know, I've played it a couple times, and it's a great unaccompanied clarinet work. And I think the composer's name is Viet Quang, and it's really cool to see that. And that's kind of how it happens. Is like, yeah, there's a composer and wrote a piece for you because you're his friend or not, or they or her
Yeah.
friend or buddy, and then that piece becomes like a part of this, canon. It becomes a part
Right.
of music that is played. That's what it is. It's a pretty
Yeah.
normal process. But if we don't think of it like it is the other, I think it's better. But when I was younger, I think there was a period. This is embarrassing to say. I think there was a period where I didn't like Brahms. Don't ask me why. I don't know if I thought it
Whoa.
was like I didn't. I don't know what it was. Isn't that weird? I shouldn't say that out loud. That's terrible.
I've
But
heard of people.
that was a very short period of my life, and I think I was really, really, really young. So,
Yeah.
but it's not that I didn't like. I just didn't get it as much as I'd love his music now. And so
Hmm.
that's okay. You don't have to love everything all the time, but
Yeah.
you know, one should like Brahms though. Just for the record, kids at home, Mozart and Brahms, you should, if if you're gonna play this music, you should. It's okay if you like those composers.
I'll remember that too. Another question from a student. His name is Aaron Lipsky. He's from Arden, North Carolina, clarinetist. Was also going to be with us for the very first time this summer, sadly, in the Young Artist Orchestra. And he would like to know, what do you see as the best way for musicians to unite against social injustices, and from there build a greater diversity in the music industry?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's really important to understand how valuable a question like that is. Because I think for so long, probably in the world, but maybe especially in our industry, but in the world, it was not always okay to even speculate about that question, or to actually have that as a question that one would think of to ask someone like me.
Hmm.
And that's actually really important, is that we have to start asking those questions and finding out exactly what we can do. And the first step is to actually kind of ask the question, be aware that there are injustices in the world, and kind of be aware of what those look like and what they are. So just kind of having that knowledge and that curiosity about how people are treated in society, and how different peoples are treated in the world and around the world. So, with that knowledge and awareness, then you can start to um, use your experiences and your personality and your perspective to affect change around you, in the immediate area around you, with friends, with family, and how you choose those friends, for instance, and how you go about living your life. And then beyond that, you can find ways to help if you have advantages that other people don't have. So, and that can be from the way you create music, how you present music, what kind of music and art you are listening and supporting, or what kind of organizations, when you do grow up and get a job too, what kind of organizations you're supporting and thinking about. Like, how is your thought process affecting the world, and how you live your life is affecting others. And kind of having, and that's just one example or two examples of how one can do that. But I think that's a really important thing, is not to be afraid to actually want to know more about things maybe that you don't know already, and not to assume that everything in the world is just fine, right? Because I think that's the danger, is that we can go through life thinking that everything is totally fine, until we find out that there are problems in the world that we didn't know about. That's the worst thing, right? So knowing about it at a young age, like and then asking those questions, and figuring out, how can I gain more knowledge so I can help, so I can be um, a symbol of what change looks like in my own expression and communication and connection with people in my community and outside of my community. And then as an artist, trying to just be true to that.
Thank you. That it's very profound and I think accessible. I think a lot of what a lot of people seem to be struggling with these days is how can I affect change and how can I affect change right now? So I wonder, what are you seeing? Um, I'm sure many of the people watching the stream have seen your Take Two Knees hashtag movement of musicians playing and what are some other things that you're seeing happening in the world among our in our field? What are you seeing happening?
Well, I think over the last 20 years that I've been a professional, I've known that there have been conversations about these things occasionally, and some attention um, pointed in the direction of how do we, have more diverse audience, or how do we reach out to people in different communities? But usually that has been kind of a like we try to schedule something, we try to do a concert or we try to do something like this, or but a lot of what I'm seeing now, and I think that it should be encouraged, is that okay, what we need to actually set it just like anything else. We need to have some sort of plan, some sort of strategic plan toward progress, right? And what does that look like? Sometimes that can be for individuals and organizations. It can be putting your money where your mouth is. It can be supporting other organizations that need that support, or even thinking about that. It can be supporting artists from communities that you say that you believe in, right? It can be doing the thing that is very obvious that you've never really done before, or it can be as simple as standing up as a solo musician, and that's why this Take Two Knees thing um, was really meaningful for me. Is that um, I just said something, and it's great that other people were inspired to say something, and so that it seems like such a small thing, right? But when small things become large things and can change people's minds and hearts, if people see that you care about something because you care about human rights or justice or equality of the sexes, and I mean all of these things, that if you care about it enough, that maybe you can affect that other person around you to also understand that it is meaningful and that we can change things by the way we think about each other as humans. And so with that, you do an action. You include someone who was excluded. You recognize a person's right to to believe that they have a right to be equal. That and with your actions, you support that in every possible way. And I think that's kind of what's going on, and that's how I look at it. That as artists, as creators, I think we have a special voice that people listen to, and that we can create change by communicating about these things and making sure that our belief system is demonstrated by our actions on an individual basis, a personal basis with people, but also greater, thinking about the greater society and the greater world and how we're moving and how we're making decisions that may affect others, and hopefully trying to do that positively. And we don't always get it right, right? That's the other thing. You have to excuse yourself for not always getting it right. I definitely haven't always gotten it right, and I definitely haven't done enough. So it's also thinking, oh, I haven't done enough. So what can I do? And then you start to go out of your comfort zone a little bit. And only then do you start to see that you can make a difference in people's
Hmm.
lives.
Yeah, I think that also is very profound and can give some of our students or anybody really who's watching a sense of individual agency that even just one person can really affect change. And if you embody the things that you believe in and you act on them, you can inspire the world around you and your communities to also act on the things that they believe in and do their best to move toward that. And I think that your Take Two Knees movement is very inspiring. I've been seeing many musicians all over playing, and it's really beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. And it's kind of a segue in these times when, between the COVID-19 pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement that's reignited and really powerful, especially right now, it there's a lot going on. And one of our students, Jasmine Pascual Flores from Los Angeles, California, she's also a clarinetist. She wants to know how you stay inspired during these pandemic times.
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I think it's really important to actually acknowledge that things are hard, right? To totally to totally be honest first, right? To with yourself. I definitely had to do that. I went through a period, probably about 3.5, maybe 4 months ago, where I felt uninspired, and I felt everything was scary. I mean, it was very scary. There was a lot of fear there, anxiety, all of these
Mm-hmm.
things. So it was actually really important for me to first acknowledge that all that was happening to me, and then to figure out a way forward. So that involved like trying to find ways that I could be healthy, like healthier, just mentally, right? That's so important for trying to be inspired, is that
Yeah.
you want to try to be you have to think about things in the way that you have to be very protective of yourself, all right? Because there's so many, dangers, but anxiety and all of these things and fears, not just physical health but mental health, right? To find ways to kind of get your mind right in order to actually start thinking about staying inspired, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to say, like, and this is actually just my own experience, so I'm just sharing this with Yasmin, is that you have to say, okay, I'm okay with where I am now, and now what? But also not to demand that you are going to do things um, more intensely than you were doing them before. But sometimes, in a way, you kind of just accept how you're feeling mentally. Then you get in a place where you're more comfortable with that, and then you get in a place where it's like, okay, he's still here. I'm healthy. I'm taking care of myself and my family and my friends, and now I can move on to setting some goals. Maybe now I can move on to like picking up my clarinet. Now I can move on to setting some goals for the following year. Now I can kind of think about being, like you said earlier, being kind to yourself, but still doing some work, right? But we can't do all of those things unless we work on staying healthy mentally, and that's been very helpful for me to try to think about that, and also to think about all the people that are trying to do all of these great things around the world to help others, right? To think about how lucky we are and be grateful for what we do have, and if we have our health, to be grateful for that. If we don't, to try to get healthy and try to stay healthy, and to think about all the other sacrifices that have been made all the time, right? And then we kind of have to simplify and then just say, look, this is what life is, right? Life can be stress. That is a thing of life,
Yeah.
right? So beyond that, once you acknowledge all of that, then you can say, okay, I'm going to go forward. I am going to get up and I'm going to go forward. And at first, it might not feel like inspiration. It might actually just feel like you're going forward and you're doing and you're being. Um, but that kind of feeling are the first steps, right? Beyond that, just like I said, if you like listening to music, do that. If you like going for runs, if you like exercise, if you like meditation, if you like anything, do that. If it's healthy for you, um, that's where I would start, because then it's like, okay, life does go on, and as somebody said recently, what did they say? I woke up, I'm breathing, and I feel blessed. Like this is like if we could all kind of think about that.
Yeah.
This is like it's kind of a simple, not to joke around about it, but like that's kind of like the simple fact of it, right? That we can, um, the inspiration comes from, um, not just perspiration, but actually, just being present with it, what's going on, and then just trying to move forward.
That in itself, I think, can serve some inspiration
Hmm.
for all of us. And man, thank you for sharing so much of yourself with us in this almost hour, I guess, that we've been together. I want to wrap up, but before I do, I think probably I'll ask everybody this. But I and it's a hard question to answer. Fair. What are you looking forward to when we go back to normal? Like what's the first thing you want to just live and do as, outside of this pandemic, I guess.
Honestly, I can't wait. And this is really funny, but I can't wait till I'm at a dinner party with friends. I'll
Yeah.
be perfectly honest. I can't wait till I'm like, seated like this close to like a whole
Yeah.
bunch of people, like
Yeah,
not
yeah,
a small group or a pod, but I'm talking like, and maybe this will never happen again. I don't know, but like
yeah. Oh yeah.
20, a
Well,
solid dinner party, 20 people, just talking, just being together as people in the same room and feeling comfortable doing that again. It seems so weird to say,
yeah.
but that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. And then, of course, playing music very close with a bunch of different people. That'll be fun too. But or
Yeah.
even listening to a concert again, or going to the opera, or going
Ah,
to a play to see people on stage, acting out these human things, all of the things that we all take for granted so much: art, music, food, these beauties of humanity. I think, that's what I'm looking forward to getting back to.
I think me too. Food, there's definitely a food component. Well, again, Anthony, thank you so very much for sharing your time, for sharing yourself and your music as always. Um, and thank you to all of you who are watching for being with us. I hope you have a wonderful night.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you very much again.
Thanks everybody. Thank you, Nicole.
Take
Bye.
care.